From Pier 86 and the Parade of Ships, this is America's Fleet Week, coming to you direct from New York.
The weather in New York, sunny, warm, beautiful. Today, gray, rainy, cloudy, cold. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Wherever you are watching us around the globe, welcome to America's Fleet Week direct from New York. We are kicking off 4 days of coverage from the granddaddy of all Fleet Weeks, Fleet Week New York. Coming to you internationally on the Armed Forces Television Network and across the United States via our broadcast partners from Nexstar Media Group. The kickoff event, today's Parade of Ships. And joining me here for the big event is the commanding officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command, Admiral Daryl Caudle. And Admiral Caudle, thank you for taking time to join us for this broadcast.
Well, Dave, thank you. I look forward to it. It is the greatest Fleet Week in the world, and it's happening all week and just ending on Memorial Day, and I cannot wait to get our ships into the harbor.
This is your third. You must love coming back to this event.
I do love it because it just the city is so welcoming. And the engagement with our sailors and Marines and Coast Guardmen throughout the city, all the events, we just really get to show the greatest city in the world what we're all about as a Navy.
And now we're showing the world what we're all about.
Absolutely.
And speaking of showing the world, this is your chance to talk to everybody in Europe and Africa and in Asia, and all of our ships at sea. What do you want to say to all of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guards, Space Force?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for what you do. Being able to command naval forces is such a privilege, and it's because of talent, the mastery, the skills, the dedication, the courage and boldness of our warriors, the ones that are out there on our ships, sailing undersea, on the sea, and above, that just do the tremendous job that they do every day worldwide, albeit in the heart of combat operations in the Red Sea, to the icy waters in the North Atlantic, to the tensions out in the Western Pacific. It is our Navy that's doing that every day, Dave.
Absolutely. Well, we're here for the Parade of Ships, and I believe that our first ship is making its way up the Hudson River. And as you can see, that's USS New York. And boy, what an absolutely beautiful ship as it makes its way up. I'm having a hard time from this perspective seeing if they're manning the rails because it's a little rainy out here. But Admiral, your thoughts on USS New York?
Well, I mean, what better ship to come to Fleet Week New York than the USS New York? I mean, it's just, you can't make it up. It's tremendous to see the New York coming down the Hudson River and being able to share in this event. I think it's fantastic. LPD, landing platform dock, carries Marines, carries connectors, carries MV-22 Osprey, and other combat helicopters. So what a show of integrated naval lethality.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some details about USS New York right there on the screen. And again, you hit it right on the head, the lethality of that ship. New York is a San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock, or an LPD, as the Admiral said to those of us in the Navy. She was commissioned on November 9th, 2009. And one of the most interesting things about the construction, much of her bow was built of salvaged steel from the World Trade Center, approximately 7 tons of steel. Let's go back to the shot as she's coming in. You don't want to see me. She has a crew of 28 officers and 330 enlisted sailors with an embarked landing force of up to 800 Marines. On the aviation side, she carries a wide range of aircraft: Super Stallions, Ospreys, Seahawks, Sea Cobras, Iroquois helicopters. Welcome to New York, USS New York. And boy, she's down home ported down where we are, down at Norfolk.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's just an incredible ship, incredible platform. And, again, like I said, it really illustrates the return of our Marine force to, where their origins should be, which is at sea with their Navy's brothers and sisters.
Yeah, absolutely. When these sailors come into town, talk about the hero's welcome that they get by the city of New York and all the things that they get to do.
Well, I mean, they're in their dress uniform. They're going to go to, restaurants, nightclubs, theater, and they do not have to get their wallet out. It's just not a thing. New York embraces them, and they're going to take care of the bill. And so that's just part of the engagement, and it's just a great way for this city to get to see our great world-class warriors.
Do you have a favorite event here at Fleet Week?
Yeah, I've got several. I wouldn't say there's an absolute favorite, but certainly the Parade of Ships kicks it off is great. I love the 9/11 Memorial, where I get to speak about what happened at 9/11. I get to re-enlist and promote some sailors, and we do some Marines and Coast Guardmen at that event. It's fantastic. And then I guess it ends on Memorial Day for me. When I get right in between the Intrepid there on the pier, I get to, be the keynote speaker, for Memorial Day and really talk about how my heartfelt love for our forces that have given the ultimate sacrifice and the Gold Star families, and to be able to tribute them that day means a lot to me as well, Dave.
Yeah, that's great. Let's go back to the shot again, because one of the things I also want to point out there is that, when you think of the Navy, you think of, sailors on board a U.S. Navy ship. But there's a whole lot of mariners that we're seeing out there right now operating on tugs. The fire department of New York had one of their fireboats that is actually leading the parade of ships. So, I mean, we can't do this alone, can we?
Absolutely not. No, it's a team effort here, from the security, the harbor security, the tug support, the police force is part of this. So it is a total team effort. It takes months and months of planning to do Fleet Week New York.
Yeah.
And without the cooperation that we get from this great city, I mean, there's cruise ships that come into these piers that they're letting us use. So there's financial implications to this as well. And the city just opens their arms. Such a pleasure.
It's a very grateful city. So what else do you want that you don't think people know about ships like New York?
Well, these ships integrate into an amphibious readiness group and carry a Marine Expeditionary Unit on board. So it's part of typically a 3-ship laydown. Usually you have an LHA or LHD, the big decks it looks like a small aircraft carrier. The LPD, which is this class, the San Antonio class. And then we used to have an LSD, which I don't think we'll get to see today because our Oak Hill, the USS Oak Hill, will be turning left and heading into Staten Island and mooring over there with a Coast Guard cutter. That forms basically the 3 ships that an amphibious readiness group forms.
Yeah. When you see a ship coming in like this, and by the way, I want to say that I'm excited that we've got a lot of guests that are going to be joining us here shortly. You've got a son-in-law who is in the Navy, so I mean, you get a thrill when it's family.
I do, yeah, of course. And they, talk to me all the time about what they're doing. It actually lets me keep check on making sure that the policies and procedures and everything that we're actually putting down are actually, no kidding, actually being implemented on the deck plate.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's go back one more time to that shot of New York as that's coming in. And we do have a very special guest who's going to be joining us here in about a couple of seconds. We won't give it away just yet. But, boy, I'll tell you, that's just a thing of beauty to see USS New York with her 7.5 tons of steel from the World Trade Center in her bow. Boy, just what an absolutely beautiful ship.
Yeah, I think the folks that did that were genius.
Yeah.
To take that steel from the 9/11, the World Trade Centers and build that into the ship.
Yeah.
And I was really an incredible thing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a special guest joining us now. We have the Honorable John Phelan, the brand new Secretary of the Navy, who is joining us here today for the Parade of Ships. And Mr. Secretary, first and foremost, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, this is not just a homecoming for USS New York coming up here. This is a homecoming for you. You're, I wouldn't say a native New Yorker, but you've got strong roots here.
Yes, my parents were both from New York, and then I lived here for 25 years. So it's a good coming home. I love New York, greatest city in the world. Really fun to be here.
What's the feeling you get when you see New York coming up the Hudson?
You got to get like butterflies. I mean, it's really an incredible thing to see. And I think Fleet Week is such a great celebration of America's maritime dominance and having Navy and Marine Corps and Coast Guardsmen meeting with civilians and asking them. I used to remember whenever we were around and they were there, we'd always buy them rounds of drinks and thank them for their service because, there's a term that people always use. I think it's overused, but I think it's really true, which is freedom isn't free, and it's defended every day. And I've been fortunate and humbled enough that President Trump selected me to be Secretary of the Navy, and it's been such an honor. And meeting these young Marines and sailors when I go around all the time, it's just inspiring. And I see them and I'm like, wow, these people can be doing so many things, and instead they decide to serve the country and really take care of us. And so greatly appreciative of it. And I think, getting to New York, coming down the Hudson is pretty cool.
Sir, you know, you've been in a job now a few months, and you've been going around. I know you've come down to Norfolk, you've been down to Texas, you've been out with Western Pacific, and, you know, what's your takeaway? You know, what have you seen that's maybe surprised you? You know, what are some things you want to focus on? You know, what's your kind of your sight picture so far?
You know, look, I think what I'd say is, so I'm on day, I think, 55 to be accurate. What I'd say is, look, we have an incredibly capable group. And I think, you know, people read stuff in the media about how this and that, and, you know, we have certain things, we have the incident at the Truman and stuff like that. But the Truman's also done some really incredible things, and you and I both know that,
Sure.
and are depending things. And so I have been really impressed by the dedication and the work ethic and the fighting spirit of our troops, both the Marines and the sailors, and that's a great thing. Do we have work to do? Yes. Are there things that we can do to get better? Absolutely. Do we have to get things more in line? Yes. And I think the president correctly has identified that if you are not a sea power, you are not a superpower. Sure. And the only way to be a sea power is to manufacture stuff and make it. And we need to do that. And so that's really what I'm focused on, is really trying to enhance our shipbuilding and get that maritime industrial base going. And I think, the president is very supportive of the armed forces and has tasked me with making sure we maintain our maritime dominance. And I think what I'd say is we're clearly there, but the gap is closing, and it's closing at an accelerating rate, and we need to widen that gap out again.
Sir, I agree.
Mr. Secretary, I want to show you the shot on the screen here. You now have sailors manning the rails as USS New York is making her way up the Hudson to Pier 88, where she's going to be opened up for tours. What's the thing that you're looking forward to doing the most during Fleet Week New York?
You know what? It's actually spending time with the sailors and Marines. I really enjoy meeting them, hearing where they're from, hearing their story. Why did they serve? Why did they decide to serve? How's it going? What can we be doing better? What do they like? What don't they like? That's really that for me is the great thing. Also, I'd say getting to walk around in these ships and see how impressive they are is a pretty cool thing to do.
Sir, you talked about shipbuilding, and I think when people think of that, what they tend to want to compare us to is the PRC. And, I'd just like to know where your thoughts are there. Are we trying to compete with them, or are we have a different strategy? What are your thoughts on what our end game is, on what right looks like for the U.S. with regard to shipbuilding?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great question. And look, we're still continuing to kind of develop what our strategy is going to be and force posture. But at the end of the day, we need to deter China from making moves we don't want them to make at the end of the day. And I think it's very important for us to have a force that's able to do that. So I don't think we need to match them ship for ship, but I do think that we need to make sure that we are staying ahead of them with the capabilities in the ships that we have. So, submarines, DDGs, we need more support vehicles. We need things to kind of support logistics. And I would just say that we have to ensure that we are at the cutting edge of warfare. And I think, one thing that conflicts have shown me is warfare looks very different now than it has in a long time. Certainly. And I think we need to make sure we're adapting and thinking about that, whether that's unmanned, and how that integrates with our force. So I think trying to develop that strategy with you and the combatant commanders is really what we need to focus on. And I think we have to, I've talked about this before in different Senate hearings and House hearings, is we need to figure out where we want to be in 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years, and then work back.
Yes, sir.
Really develop that. And how does that integrate? And how does technology integrate? How do we create more flexibility into the force? That's really critical. But I think to be specific to your question, the Indo-Pacific is very important, and the president has made it very clear that is a strategic area to us, and we have very important allies there, and we intend to defend that area.
Yes, sir.
We know your time is precious, and I'll just ask you one last, not really a question, but more a favor. We're broadcasting live on AFN around the world. This is a great opportunity to talk to every sailor on the planet, those ashore and those at sea. What would you like to tell the audience?
Well, look, first of all, thank you all. I know you hear it a lot, but it's actually heartfelt. Thank you for your service. I know the American people greatly appreciate what you do. For those of you who unfortunately can't be here at Fleet Week in New York, having a great time on Liberty, thank you for manning the watch, being there, keeping an eye on things. We greatly appreciate it. We hope to get you out here very soon to New York and really give you all that you need. But I would basically say to them, thank you. You're appreciated. What you do every day is really special and important. And if there's something we can be doing better, reach out to me.
If we could get a round of applause for our Secretary of the Navy, everybody. Great job. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, there you go. Again, USS New York making her way up the Hudson, getting ready to pull into Pier 88 and open her up for tours. Tours are going to be, I believe, on Friday and Saturday, sir.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, come on down.
Yeah.
If you're here. And if you're not, maybe you know somebody that is, and tell them to get down to these ships to meet these sailors.
I mean, how often do you really get a chance to come aboard an active U.S. Navy ship and get a tour and meet real sailors, those from all across the country who are, raising their right hand to defend our country?
It's not that often. And the best part, there'll be static displays with experts who can explain exactly what that kit is and what it does.
Yeah.
You can crawl around on this stuff and look at it. So,
one of the things, let's go back to the shot of New York. And we had said that we've got a bunch of Marines that have the capability of being on board New York. And so we are joined by the commanding officer of Marine Forces Command, Lieutenant General Shea. How you doing?
Great to be here today.
Are you enjoying Fleet Week so far?
Oh, my gosh. The energy of the city and the energy of the Marines and sailors and Coast Guardsmen can't be matched. It's awesome.
It just began.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lieutenant Shea is my running mate down in Norfolk, and we're teammates down there because we're, one large naval force. And so, Bobby, why don't you tell the folks out on AFN exactly kind of your thoughts on where you see the Marine Corps going, as a navally integrated force?
Yeah, super. Thanks for the question. Just super excited for the partnership with the Navy Marine Corps team. I've deployed aboard amphibious ready groups twice in my career, both having them take us over to combat. And I will tell you, there is something unmatched about a Navy Marine Corps team, forward deployed, and ready to execute so many different missions, everything from deterrence to high-end combat. It's just really remarkable. I don't think there's anything else like it.
I would agree with you. And, 9/11 happened, and you guys had to go fight. And you've had this reemergence and re-identification coming back to your roots of how we started 250 years ago. And getting that rudder over is not easy, because of all the, training you did to do a lot of ground fighting. And I just think it's been a miraculous transformation. And I know the Commandant is, laser focused on getting you back on our ships, deploying as an ARG and a MU together as a Navy team. So I just want to thank you for your leadership for that.
Yeah, but be honest with us here, okay? How do Marines feel about being on ships?
We love it.
Really? Okay.
We love it. And the Admiral brought up, after 9/11 happened, we almost bookended it. The first Marine Corps units that went into Afghanistan right after 9/11, just a couple weeks after 9/11, were launched from amphibious ships. So that forward capability really enabled our nation to respond very quickly after our nation was attacked, but now bookended at the other end. We spent a lot of time at sustained land combat ashore in Afghanistan and Iraq, but the Admiral's exactly right. Getting back on ship, being able to execute those high-end missions that only a Navy Marine Corps team can execute. You look at a ship like the USS New York, and, right now we've got some great Marines and sailors in beautiful dress uniforms, but to see that ship with simultaneous aviation operations going on.
Yeah.
At the same time, we've got well deck operations going on to project power ashore. It's pretty remarkable, and I think unless you've been on one of those ships, seeing that happen simultaneous, it's pretty difficult to appreciate the complexity of it, but the lethality and the power of it as well.
Wow. All right.
Well, this is one ship of a 3-ship ARG-MU, but this one can have up to 800 Marines. That's a lot of combat power. So I'm amazed by it. I know this is your first Fleet Week, and what is it you're kind of looking forward to this week?
Yeah, I think so many times we're doing exercises and operations out as part of a joint force, and sometimes you forget how special it is to be a Marine or a sailor, and then you interact with folks like here in New York City in your uniform, and you're reminded again, it really is special what these young men and women do for our nation, and we're just really grateful to have the folks in New York City welcome us with such open arms. So that's a long way of saying I think the interaction of our service members and the communities that they serve. We're going to have Marines from Alabama who are here in New York City for the very first time and see the lights of Times Square for the first time. And then we're also going to have native New Yorkers who are just really happy to be welcomed back home by their friends and family.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a fantastic Fleet Week.
I'm looking forward to it. Great to be here.
Yeah,
of course.
Thank you. Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Ma'am. All right, so let's go back to the screen there, and as you can see, the mighty U.S. Coast Guard cutter Calhoun is now making its way up the Hudson River. Calhoun is the newest and most technologically advanced national security cutter in the Coast Guard fleet. Stretching 418 feet in length, the ship came into service in April of last year, so she still has that new boat smell. Calhoun is named in honor of the first Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Charles Calhoun. Calhoun's primary mission is counter-drug operations, migrant interdiction, maritime law enforcement, and defense readiness, ensuring that the safety and security of America's maritime borders remain safe. Now, outfitting the state-of-the-art ship is a command and control system, advanced sensors, and aviation facilities capable of supporting helicopters and unmanned aircraft. Calhoun is equipped to meet the evolving challenges of modern maritime operations. She has a crew of 124 officers and sailors. So there you go, looking at USS Calhoun making her way up the Hudson, and what a beautiful sight that is. Admiral, talk about the importance of the relationship between the United States Navy and the Coast Guard.
Well, I think it can be highlighted best for what's going on the southern border right now. We're doing southern border operations in the Gulf of America, and we're doing it off the coast of San Diego. Those are team efforts with our Coast Guard. So not only are the USS Gravely and now the USS Charleston, which just relieved the Stockdale in the Pacific, are doing operations together with ships, but we have legal detachments on board that allow us to leverage the Coast Guard authorities to do boarding and seizure operations. Mm-hmm. So it's a symbiotic relationship, especially right now for the southern border operations we're doing.
Fantastic. Yeah, USS Calhoun making her way up the river right now. Any message you want to say to those coasties?
Well, I mean, their teammates are part of the maritime service, and they just punch bigger than their weight. It's a small force, but they are globally employed. People think of them perhaps as, in our territorial waters and our fisheries and lakes, but they're over in Bahrain. They're in the Western Pacific. Okay, of course, they're in the southern border operations. So I think they punch much larger than we would normally think that they do.
Yeah. So
I'm really proud to have them as partners during this Fleet Week.
Yeah. As we look at the Coast Guard cutter making its way up, I do want to bring in Admiral Patchell, the Deputy Commander of U.S. Second Fleet. And we know that we've got a Canadian ship making its way up the river. So first and foremost, welcome you to Fleet Week. You are with Second Fleet, but you're a Canadian admiral. So, I mean, this kind of give you a really exciting feeling to see one of your ships coming up the river as part of this U.S. Navy Fleet Week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as mentioned, Rear Admiral David Patchell, Vice Commander, U.S. Second Fleet. And I've been embedded in Norfolk, Virginia for 3 years now. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here in New York to celebrate the sea services. And yes, to have a Canadian ship, HMCS Frederick Rolette, as part of Fleet Week.
Yeah, would you tell us about that ship?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually Canada's newest warship. So it's the 5th of 6 Arctic offshore patrol ships. Harry DeWolf class will be delivered for Canada. It is an icebreaker, so it can break up to 4.5 feet of ice in the north. And when it's not patrolling the North American Arctic, it can be used for southern border operations, which you just mentioned with the Coast Guard Admiral. HMCS William Hall, one of the sister ships, is en route to Op Crib right now to stop that counter-narcotics smuggling. And so it's a very versatile ship, and I think we're just scratching the surface of what these ships can do.
You know, I just had the opportunity to be up in Halifax at the Irving shipyard, where I got a tour of, I've been on board a couple of them, but to see that shipyard, basically, and correct me if I'm wrong here, delivering one of these about a year, kind of a 1 year per year delivery rate. You know, there's some lessons from, I think, U.S. shipbuilding that we need to understand. That's a pretty good production, because this is a 7,000-plus ton ship. And so it's a large ship, and I do think it's such a vehicle for so many missions that we're yet just scratching the surface on understanding what it can do.
Yeah, absolutely, Admiral. So obviously very useful in the Arctic. You know, as the Arctic opens up, being able to patrol that Arctic is obviously essential for North America. But as you said, we're going to deploy these ships into the Mediterranean, into the Indo-Asia Pacific, and right across the world where they can be useful.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that you've talked a lot about, though, but could you elaborate a little bit more on the Arctic and the strategic importance of the environment?
Well, I mean, the Arctic to me is something that I find requires a lot of education. You know, for one, most people think of the packed ice, but the Arctic is anything really above the Arctic Circle. So, 67 degrees latitude and up. That's a lot of ocean. And then in the high north part of the Arctic, if we are not careful, we are going to have Russia basically lay claim to that area. And that's just a non-starter from the other countries in the Arctic Council. And our most important partner there, which partnership is crucial in those austere, challenging, high-latitudes environments, is Canada.
Yeah.
And the teamwork we have together with our capabilities, our presence operations, and working together between the U.S. and Canada for Arctic operations is so crucial. Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. So we look at threats in the Arctic, threats to the Arctic, and then threats through the Arctic. And so as the Admiral mentioned, any sort of vector of approach through the Arctic to North America, we're very concerned about that. And so having these ships, and these ships actually can sail 7,000 nautical miles without fueling.
Wow.
So they can go from Victoria, British Columbia, right to Halifax, Nova Scotia, through the Northwest Passage without getting gas, which is absolutely essential in the north, because we're still looking at sustainment options, but sustainment in the north is absolutely critical and challenging.
Yeah. Well, we only unfortunately have a short amount of time to show the parade of ships, but let's go back to the shot that we have. Again, we've got the Coast Guard participating. We've got the U.S. Navy participating. We've got ships from the U.S. Naval Academy. So we're going to unfortunately have to wrap it up from here. But with the ships now heading to their piers, America's Fleet Week officially begins. To all our service members around the globe, our families, our friends, our fans watching across the U.S., we will be bringing you these stories all week long. Please stay tuned.